Good morning and welcome to BlackUSA.News. My name's Donnie Glover, and today we're here with our own reparations expert guru, but also now movie consultant, Morgan State University's own Dr. Ray Winbush. Happy Black History Month, big brother.
How you doing, Brother Donnie?
Man, I'm grateful. So now you're in the movies now. Tell me about Judas and the Black Messiah.
Well, I mean, it's a 30-year story. Charles King is one of the biggest producers in Hollywood right now. He did Denzel's movie Fences, did a film about Thurgood Marshall a few years ago. And I did not know, when I would see the films produced by him, I did not know that I taught him when I taught at Vanderbilt University years ago. And he told me he was always going to make positive films about Black people. So, you kind of, yeah, sure, okay. Long story short, I was doing a keynote address at the International Black Film Festival in Nashville a couple of years, and the woman that introduced me said Dr. Winbush had a big impact on Hollywood. And only impact I thought I had on Hollywood was buying a ticket to a movie. And then she told me that Charles King was my student, and then I associated him with the Charles King, that's doing the movies right now. So when I had lunch with Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther, like 3 years ago, and Charles had introduced me to him, saying that he wanted to make a film about a real Black Panther, Fred Hampton. So I did the research. So I was just doing research for Shaka King, the director of the film, and it's gotten rave reviews. It's been nominated for 2 Golden Globes. Some people say there's going to be rumors it'll be nominated for an Oscar as Best Picture. So I'm just glad I was able to use it as a tool to understand one of the greatest Black leaders of the 20th century.
Well, so are you, big brother. Okay. You've been talking about reparations. And I just got to get your take. Here we're in 2021, and things you have articulated, things you have worked for, are finally getting some momentum. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, those things led to it. What's your take on the whole 2020?
Well, 2020 is a pivotal year, man. There's so much. The things that Black folk have been talking about for decades, police brutality, the murders of our people, all of that. I think the only difference is that right now we have these things called cell phones, that all of us have cameras, and we can see, or I should say the rest of America can see what we've been saying for years about police brutality. It just came to the head. I think the timing of this pandemic, the incredible murder of George Floyd that went global. I mean, people think it was just here in the United States. I had friends in Paris that were demonstrating. It literally went all over the world. And so I think that, the issue of police brutality, it cannot be denied anymore at all. And not that the proof that it exists, but how do we get justice as a result of
it? So do you feel vindicated? I mean, when you've been talking about reparations 20, 30 years.
35.
You have books on 35 years. You have books on the topic. For it to finally happen, I mean, for you, it's got to be better than the first Black president.
Well, what it is, Donnie, a handful of Black scholars, 3 decades ago, were talking about reparations. And what inspired me is that back in the 80s, I heard Queen Mother Moore, who some people consider as being like the mother of reparations. She said once, you ever had one person say one sentence and it shifts everything about your view of the world? And she said, everything that Black people have been doing in this country since we were stolen from Africa is to try to repair the damage of what white people have done to us. And when she said that, I thought about, affirmative action, set aside contracts, desegregation. All of those things were about, trying to repair damage. So I just jumped feet first into writing about it, talking about it. And now, Randall Robinson, a book was called The Debt. And then I wrote a book called Should America Pay? And then I talked about Belinda Royale Sutton, who in 1781, got reparations while she was enslaved in Massachusetts. So it's good now to see places like Evanston, Illinois, where they have implemented, not just talked about, but implemented reparations to the tune of $10 million, because there had been a history of housing discrimination in the city. And we're giving the city is giving $25,000 per person. So if you're a husband and a wife, you get $50,000 toward the purchase of a new home. So it's good to see that this repair is finally happening.
Did you think it would happen? Did you think it would happen?
That's a good question. When I edited Should America Pay in 2003, I believe it was, I thought that we would not have reparations in any form in my lifetime. We did, and we are. We've got down payments now. Just 2 years after that book was written, the old Wachovia Bank, which is now Wells Fargo, they issued reparations in North Carolina, and JP Morgan Chase gave reparations for its complicity in the slave trade in New Orleans. Both of those banks would use Black people, enslaved people, as collateral for bad loans.
Now, this is the first collateral used in America.
Exactly. And Donnie, what you got to realize, in 1859, what's his name? Baptist, he wrote this book called The Half Has Not Been Told. The number one industry in the United States was enslavement. It wasn't cotton or anything else. It was enslavement. That was the biggest product that America had. And so we're seeing the results of it right now in so many ways,
Let me ask you, do you think the international community successfully puts pressure on America? Do you think America cares what the international community thinks?
That's a very good question. Probably since Trump, not as much. America's lost a lot of credibility at a lot of in a lot of different ways. And see, America is now seen as hypocritical, probably has been, seen as hypocritical in this world. I mean, we were crying about the Russians interfering with the 2016 election and stuff. America's been interfering with elections for decades. We could talk about Chile, we could talk about Panama, the death of Lumumba in the Congo, all types of stuff that we've interfered with. So I think America is hypocritical. Like Ta-Nehisi Coates says, America is a country built on lies. And this is not me being unpatriotic or something like that. It's okay for a country to be built on myths or legends, but this country is built on lies. And the lies are enormous. We've seen the so-called big lie just in this past election, where a president of the United States kept saying that, the election was illegitimate. And it was only because Black folk turned out in like record numbers that they're decrying this stuff. And to be sure, that insurrection on January, I call it 1621, it was because of racism, but that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah.
This country was built on lies. So therefore, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson could never be considered great. They were human traffickers.
They were. Thomas Jefferson started raping Sally Hemings when she was 14 years old. And then when you present that to people, people say, oh, you're tearing down the founding fathers. The founding fathers were racist. They were rapists. They stole land. They killed, indigenous people across this country and so forth. So, but the idea is that, we've got a mountain in, South Dakota carved out, Rushmore. Which one of them Dakotas is in? One of the North or South Dakota. And we've got these heads up there of these people as if they were great. They had
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, they had horrific and did horrific things to Native Americans and so forth. I think it's no coincidence that, former President Trump had in his office a bust of Andrew Jackson, who was probably the most racist president up until Donald Trump, because of his slaughter of Native people in this country. So the country is based on a bunch of lies. And until white Americans, look at this country for what it is relative to Native people, relative to Black people, it will never be the so-called America that we sing about in songs like America the Beautiful and so forth.
Well, Dr. Winbush, I'm working on my second book. It should be out shortly. It's on Black Wall Street. And it takes me to a piece of history that I didn't know. I never paid attention to the fact that Florida, not being an original colony, was a freedom colony.
Oh, it was. Absolutely. You look at the rebellion of Cato in the 1600s, I believe. Cato, when he escaped, and they call it Cato's Rebellion, when he escaped in South Carolina, his army was moving south because they knew that if they got to Florida, they would be free. So, and Florida, as you know, was founded by the Spanish or colonized by the Spanish. And at that time, they didn't have any enslavement in Florida as it was in the rest of the United States. So yeah, it was free, and people went down there. That's why a lot of Black folk live in Florida today. They don't know their history, but it's because of a lot of that.
Now, that would include the Gullah Islands of South Carolina and the Geechee Islands of Georgia too?
Well, not somewhat. The Gullah Islands and the Sea Islands off the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, they were founded, those were escaped Africans.
Right.
Right. The word Gullah actually comes from the nation of Angola. It's a corruption of the word Angola. And those Africans escaped, what they call maroons. They escaped years and years ago. Just like in Jamaica, you find maroon colonies all over the Garifuna in Central America. You find that. So the Gullah people escaped over there. They retained much of the language still. Those islands also, as you know, part of the 40 acres and a mule that Black folk never got right after the American Civil War. So the Gullah people probably are the most indigenous African in terms of just culture that we have in this country today.
You mentioned some of these other countries. I didn't realize there were slave rebellions wherever slavery was. Now, I'm American, you're American, I think from an American perspective, but Haiti, Mexico, I didn't know you had Black rebels in Mexico.
Right. The idea of the happy slave is another American lie, and really is a global lie. One of my teachers at University of Chicago, where I went to school, was John Hope Franklin. And in fact, Dr. Franklin's father was Buck Franklin, and he was the lawyer for Tulsa, Oklahoma, the so-called Tulsa Massacre in 1921. He said that at any given time on American Caribbean plantations, that 1/3 of all the enslaved Africans were in the process of escaping or had escaped. And Dottie, they say that the most common time of the year, Christmas.
Yeah.
Because they said, I mean, they would wake up, Africans would leave in the plantations on Christmas Eve, and you get up, if you're the so-called master, you say, man, I don't feel like doing this. So they would have a week because nobody wanted to go out, between Christmas and New Year's. So, our people have always been rebellious. We know about Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey and Gabriel Prosser, but there were literally hundreds of slave rebellions throughout history.
I recently learned about Madison, Washington.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some Africans that I don't even know the names of them, like that one that you just named. You got me on that one. You need to explain me on that
He was on the brig Creole. They wanted to ship him, I think, from Virginia to New Orleans. And they did the Amistad. They took over the ship and landed in the Bahamas.
Oh,
hey, good morning, Marsha Jews. Welcome, boo.
Good morning. Good morning.
How you doing?
Wonderful. So
Okay.
Dr. Winbush, you're just full of this information. It's wonderful.
No, I just try to read a lot. That's all. Just try to read a lot.
But you're reading important history.
Well, I always tell my students they should spend at least 30 minutes a day reading something about Black folk. And, they'll complain to me like, Dr. Well, that's a lot. I said, but you look at Empire for an hour or Power for an hour, just spend 30 minutes a day reading something about Black folk.
Well, let me ask this. You have a library there at Morgan State University with archives that you cannot find anywhere else in the world, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And
so that's one of the biggest treasures at Morgan. And
is it public? Is it for public use or just for the students?
Well, you can get special permission. I'm happy. I'm not announcing it, but I don't think it's a secret. Leonard Jeffries, the great Black Studies professor, I had a conference here a couple of years ago, and he was so impressed with the library that him and his wife are donating their papers to the library. They're in the process now, so we'll be acquiring their papers. We're actually in the time we're doing it right now, in fact.
Do our students understand what we have? I mean, we always hear HBCUs need more money. Yeah. I look at Morgan State's campus. I remember it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's magnanimous, but it means nothing if we're not taking advantage of it. HBCU, but I'm starting to see other non-folks up in the house, and I'm just wondering, all of this work and money that goes into building this empire of an educational facility, do we know what we got?
Well, I don't think a lot of us do. I mean, when we talk, I've taught at 4 HBCUs in this country. I taught at Vanderbilt, but I love HBCUs. And we don't realize that the leadership of Black America came out of the HBCU experience. We can talk about Toni Morrison. We can talk about Martin Luther King. We can talk about Samuel L. Jackson. Or P. Diddy, all of them emerged out of Black school. We can talk about the Vice President of the United States right now. And it's amazing when people ask me all the time, they say, well, I'm trying to decide if I should send my child to an HBCU or a TWI, a traditionally white institution. I said, well, if you want your child to be a leader, send them to an HBCU. If you want them to be a follower, send them to a white school.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that?
Because I think that Black colleges nourish, and nurture our people. You can get leadership from white institutions, but it's more rare. For example,
what do you mean rare? But it's rare. What does that mean, Dr. Winbush?
It is rare. I mentioned earlier this film that's out now, Judas and the Black Messiah. I taught Charles King, the biggest, or second only to Tyler Perry, at Vanderbilt. Michelle Alexander was one of my students that wrote The New Jim Crow.
Yeah.
She was at Vanderbilt. But I also taught a lot of Black students at Fisk and here at Morgan, Oakwood, that have Barry Black, the chaplain of the Senate right now, was my roommate in college. You know, so he has been, I mean, not just Barry, I mean, I could name a bunch of people. So leadership comes from Black institutions. I don't discourage people from going to TWI, but I prefer their being educated. You know, one of my colleagues always says that HBCU will educate you and a TWI will train you.
Mm.
And being trained and being educated are two different things.
And what's that difference?
Well, you know, you can train a dog, or you can train a seal, or you can train an elephant to stand on its hind legs. Education means that you teach a person to think, to reason, to be critical analysis. A dog that stands on his legs just stands on his legs because he'll get a reward. And so, you know, that's my, you know, his feeling and mine as well.
So the next time I have a college roommate from Morehouse, but he calls me public school because he went to private school. I said, public school people taught you everything you know, but I'm going to let that slide. But I really hear you saying the TWIs are dry.
Well,
they lack that either fat back or smoked turkey in their greens. It's just.
You know, two of my three children, they went to HBCUs. You know, my daughter's a dentist, my son's a lawyer who married a physician who went to an HBCU. And, you know, and I just see, you know, HBCU people leading what we call, I mean, look at Stacey Abrams, Kamala Harris, you know, the sister that's mayor of Atlanta. What's her name? All of them are HBCU.
Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Right. Keisha Lance Bottoms, who was the daughter of Major Lance. I don't know if you go back that far with R&B.
But a musician that came through Atlanta.
That's right. That's right. So
we met her mama's neighbor.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Morocco Coleman down in Atlanta.
Is that right? So I'm just a cheerleader for HBCUs, and not just, you know, in a phony way, but really believe that they do much better with our children.
So I got to ask you this, Doc. Within 50 miles of Baltimore, we have right now 9 Black college presidents.
That's a lot. I didn't know that.
Coppin, UMBC, UDC.
Yeah, that's right.
College Park, you got Black presidents. Wasn't there a book that warned us about the Black college president?
There was a lot of discussion when Roots came out with Alex Haley about the role of Black college presidents being
overseas.
Yeah, and trying to keep.
What does that mean? Wait a minute. What? How did we get to overseer? What does that mean?
Tools of the system meant to keep the intelligent Black people down.
Right. And I mean, and Alex Haley.
Why would we think that though?
No, but it was a reality too. I mean, and I think it started with some people call the Booker T. Washington syndrome, you know, that when he was over what is called now the Tuskegee machine, he was there to make sure that Black people stayed in their places. And he became a model for HBCU presidents for many, many years. Some people say we're still suffering for that. I mean, I admire Washington for what he did relative to Black folk learning a trade and stuff. But his idea that we should kind of stay in our place, or as he said, put your bucket down where you are, you know.
But what does that mean? Explain that to those who may not understand putting one's bucket down where you are.
Be an electrician, be a carpenter, get a blue collar job, do your job, work hard.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of Tuskegee was that Black people should be subservient to white people. In, what was it, 1887, I believe it was, there was a series of conferences held up in New York called the Mohawk, not Mohawk, but the Mohawk conferences. And Rutherford B. Hayes, the former president of the United States, he watched over, and they said at that conference that we should not teach Black people about Africa, that we should teach them that they should learn a trade and not what they called the higher sciences, like philosophy, English psychology and all of that. So the idea, and Booker T. Washington bought into that. And
he was a participant.
Absolutely.
And he defended it against people like Du Bois, right?
Oh, man. Read the 3rd chapter of Du Bois' Souls of Black Folk. The name of it is of Mr. Booker T. Washington and Others. And it was his indictment of Booker T. Washington for limiting the aspirations of Black people.
So in looking at now, fast forward to we're still here, Ray Winbush, 2021. And if we're looking at this now, what is so different now in our behaviors and our mores to what we are talking about with the Du Bois and what other people were thinking, the Booker T. Washingtons, and how that mindset came about versus the spirit of a Du Bois?
Well, you got to look at how each of them were raised, for example. But in general, there's always been this segment of our population that says, don't challenge the system of white supremacy. Go along with it. Try to make peace with it. Live in it, but don't challenge it. Du Bois felt that it should be challenged. And you see that reflected in his writing.
Right.
Washington felt that you should be accommodationist. People forget in his Atlanta, what they call the Atlanta Exposition speech in 1896, he held up his hand in front of an all-white group and said, like, we can all be, like that. What is the fingers on a hand? We have the palm is in common, but the fingers are all separate but equal. And the Supreme Court, just a few months after that, used the expression separate but equal in its Plessy versus Ferguson thing. So, the idea that we are, I think there's always going to be people who challenge the status quo of white supremacy. And there's some who are afraid to challenge it. And we see this in Malcolm. We see it in Fred Hampton. But we also see it in people like the opposite, and people like Clarence Thomas, or some of the new Black conservatives, and then not really new, but we saw it last week at Herschel Walker when he testified in front of Sheila Jackson Lee's subcommittee on reparations, being very accommodationist. It's just a part of who we are. And it also shows the damage done by white supremacy, not only in terms of economics, but psychologically.
So these are things, though, that it seems to me for people who have a different vantage point, right? So I'm hoping that's a different word or different term that,
right.
And in that thinking, looking at who they are, how they were raised, what their environment was, and how they got there. So, and I'm going to use Clarence Thomas as an example. I lived in Washington at that time. And at that time, he was over at EEOC.
Right.
Or he and I see the other fellow's name. I can't think of his name. Bill something. They were all EEOC commissioners.
Okay.
I never would have expected, based on what I saw before he got to the Supreme Court, that this would be the result of it. Well, he did not demonstrate
that when he was at EEOC.
He did not demonstrate, and I was around them quite a bit, just in what I was doing. But it was fascinating to see this extreme. There's another extreme in looking at Ben Carson.
Yeah.
And I mean, but this is real. Like, I don't know that person that was over in the White House. Who is he? And so what happens that people totally change that personality, that other self comes out? what occurs? Is there some
Got
sort
a
of
paycheck.
trauma?
They got a paycheck.
Okay. Is there some sort of trauma that occurs? Because you can't just get paid and your whole being starts changing. The essence of who you are seems to be, parts of it are lost or damaged.
Well, I think, Malefi Asante, who teaches at Temple University, he says the further that Black people get away from their, what he calls their African self, the crazier they become. I was at Yale in '69, and Clarence Thomas was a Black Panther. Yes, he was a member. When he was in law school at Yale, he was a member of the Black Panther Party. Now we see where he is. I'll give you another quick example. When Dr. King was in Birmingham and wrote that famous letter from the Birmingham jail, he addressed it. Many of us, we should read that. I read that once a year on his birthday as a tribute to Dr. King. Huh. But he wrote that letter to the ministers of Birmingham who didn't want him there because he was upsetting the status quo. They asked him that famous question, why are you in Birmingham? And Dr. King's response was, I am in Birmingham because injustice is in Birmingham. Well, one of the ministers was a Reverend Rice, whose daughter became Condoleezza Rice.
Wow.
And 4 blocks away from where Condoleezza lived, and both of them had friends in the 1963 Birmingham church bombing when 4 little girls were killed, was another sister by the name of Angela Davis. So they grew up just a few blocks from each other, Angela Davis and Condoleezza Rice. And look at the difference between
That's deep.
Yeah.
So that's trauma.
That's apples and oranges. Are you serious?
It's a reaction to trauma.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. Joy DeGruy has written about it in Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Some people are become in awe. And as you said, Donnie, some people just say, I want the money. I just want the money. I'll do whatever you say for the money. We're talking about
your soul. Let's just sell your soul.
Some people just sell their soul. It's just that simple. Herschel Walker, when he did that thing last week at the House, they're now talking about him running against Reverend Warnock, who just became the senator in Georgia, the Black senator in Georgia. Right. He's probably going to run against him. And I guarantee you some people are going to be more infatuated with his football career than they will the political aspects of it.
Negro said Trump was not a racist. Doesn't have a racist bone in his body.
He said he's not a racist bone. See, he's out of what I call, he's out of his Black mind.
He and Kanye.
Kanye has become a parody of himself. I mean, he's almost.
They make me tired.
Yeah. And some people, I think racism sometimes just wears you out and wears you down.
Yeah, but Dr. Winbush, what we're talking about now is racism within the race. Well, so we need to come up with a whole new name for the racists that are Black, that are in the Black community. There needs to be a name.
Pedagogy of the oppressed.
Yeah, I mean,
I need like one word.
Sellouts.
You can sell them, but they've always been with us. You read about Denmark Vesey in 1822 in South Carolina. Had his rebellion been successful, it would have been the largest slave rebellion in history. 2 nights before the rebellion, this group they called themselves the colored people. This was the group. They told their masters what Denmark was doing, and he was hanged, as you know, in June of 1822.
A slave named Prelude.
Right, exactly. So we've always had these sellouts in our community. There's nothing new about them. We still have them.
Like you mentioned Tuskegee, and I've always wanted to ask, how could the people at Tuskegee not know an experiment was going on?
Well,
giving syphilis
in their labs.
Some of them did know.
So are those the same people?
Film Mrs. Evers' Boys. A lot of times, the system of white supremacy will use us as tools to hurt our people. So they use Mrs. Evers to round up those men and put them in a control and experimental group on the issue of syphilis.
So let me fast forward, Doc. T.D. Jakes tells me to get the vaccine. And I say, I don't know you, Slim. Praise the Lord. I see you on TV, but you don't have no credibility at 1142 North Carolina.
But it's not just T.D. Jakes. It's, you know, we've got people who are leaders in the community. Pardon me?
Hank Aaron died, didn't he?
17 days after he took the vaccine.
Right. But there are people who are standing there on public television telling us, and yes, I took the shot, and yes, I'm okay, and Doc, you should too.
Doc, they got news outlets getting paid to promote the vaccine in the Black community, and Marsha and I have decided that we will not tell anybody what to do with their body.
Look, let me tell you something about vaccine. First of all, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, not at all. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. What I am is skeptical. You cannot create, I can tell you this as somebody who knows a bunch about, you cannot create a vaccine.
In 5 minutes.
Well, they did 9 months.
5 minutes.
Creating vaccines usually take 4 to 5 years. If you read the history of the Salk vaccine, the polio vaccine, smallpox, these things took years to create.
Right.
What we're seeing right now is just simply we are the experimental group.
No question.
And so I will take the vaccine. I ain't taking the ones that are out there right now.
Nope.
I'm going to wait 4 or 5 years till I know. And I'd rather take my chances with the virus right now than put something in my arm that we're not
knowingly that you don't really know.
Right.
That you don't know.
And I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not. I took that, what's that, shingle shot or whatever it was a couple years ago. I'd take my polio and get my children, but all of those vaccines have been thoroughly tested. I mean, even the name of that thing, was it Operation Warp Speed? You can't make a vaccine.
Right. This is like Superman movie. Right. It doesn't even make sense to me. It's like comedic.
Right.
Science says, you said 5 years, 9 months is a big difference between 9 months and 5. That's right.
Because you're not supposed to be having no baby. You're supposed to be getting a vaccine that will deal with the holistic and has everything in it that's required, that they don't even know because they haven't taken the time to see what else to do the testing. Right. So everybody should do what they think they should do. Do your prayers, do whatever God you serve, read whatever you need to read, but don't go into it blind.
Right. And see, it's really interesting. I'm a psychologist by trade, and it's really interesting. First, there was this real skepticism in the Black community, which still is there. So then they started saying, well, there's a shortage of the vaccine.
Trying to trick us.
So now everybody said, well, I got to get, what is it? Forbidden fruit is always sweet, as my mother used to say. But now people are like, I got to get that vaccine. It's a shortage of. I'm just waiting right now. I practice the masking, the distancing, all of that stuff, wash my hands and all of that. But I'm skeptical right now about, and then I'm wondering whether or not it's a vaccine. I mean, I got shot as a polio vaccine when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I never had to go back again. And it's interesting. We don't call it a flu vaccine. We call it the flu shot every year and now they're talking about, well, you may need to get a booster of the Moderna vaccine. Is it a vaccine? So I'm just real skeptical about.
You talk about people getting money. So these big pharma is making stupid money on these vaccines.
The population of Earth is about 7.5 billion people. If you can vaccinate half of them 2 or 3 times a year, you're making a lot of money.
Right. Even if it were $2.
That's right.
Even if it was $2 a shot, man, that's some serious stupid money.
That's right,
hey, Johnny. That's what we should do. We should open up a lab. We could whip something up, put it out on the market.
No, they would lock you up. See, if black people climbed the walls of the Capitol, there would have been a different response. they're
it would
good.
have been a slaughter.
Lord hammer, they'd have dropped a bomb on it. They'd have moved all those people, the senators and the Congress people, out of there and dropped a bomb on that. That
And I
whole
don't
place
want
would
to
have
hear.
been imploded.
And Marsha, I don't want to hear any more about Blue Lives Matter either.
What? Get out my face.
I don't want to hear that, because if Blue Lives Matter, they wouldn't have killed some cops while they were there, beat and did all this other stuff.
And
So
didn't care
about Blue
because
Lives Matter.
they did not care. They came in
Right.
with nothing but hate, mayhem, and murder in their mind, while the former person was in a tent watching it on the big screen, getting drunk and partying with his buddies, laughing at the people scaling the wall. He should be in prison right now.
Doc, you talked about post-traumatic slavery disorder. We lost an icon over the past year, Dr. Patricia Newton. Any thoughts?
Oh my God.
Big loss.
We've lost in the past 4 years, we've lost two of the greatest Black psychiatrists in this, Dr. Newton, who was my friend, and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who was also my friend. I put a book out called The Osiris Papers about Dr. Welsing. But Pat, it was when Frances passed, I started referring people to Pat. Now I don't know who to refer them to.
Same boat.
And so they just both were two great psychiatrists. In the history of Black psychiatry and psychology written, their names will be at the top.
But when you speak about that, though, I think it's very interesting because there are a lot of Black people that I personally know who just abhor the thought of going to a psychiatrist, that don't want to deal with any of those issues. And they, kind of like the conversation we're having. How do we even deal with the fact that there are so many people right now who are in so much trauma, just basic trauma? How do we deal with that? How do we get the mindset changed of people that look like us to see that we need help? And we can't always do it by ourselves. What's the problem?
Well, the two people that we don't like to see in our communities are psychologists, mental health workers, and lawyers. We like to handle those things ourselves. And the idea of being crazy, if you please, has been something that Black folk, white folks will go around and say, yes, my psychiatrist, and they'll just almost brag about the fact that they're seeing a therapist or something like that. Right. Black folk don't want you to think they're crazy. And you don't have to be crazy to go to a psychologist or psychiatrist or a counselor. What you want to do is get help with some problem that you may face. The person, and they've actually found this out, the Association of Black Psychologists have found out, the person outside of the family that most Black people talk to the most, the pastor, is the preacher. That's what we talk to. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, but sometimes the preacher don't know what he or she is talking about.
Right, because they're not trained properly.
On the front row.
Right.
So here's another thing that's a concern too, that we as a people, as a Black woman in America, we have so many different layers of issues that we have to deal with to fight, to get to where we need to go. And especially when you're looking for employment, or you're looking to buy a house, or you're looking to do anything new, start a new business, and people want to see your records. Then now you've got a whole thing where people become afraid that they're going to look at those records and hold that against them. That's another strike, right? So the check off, how do we overcome that and feel that confidence that we still can go through whatever else, because we're Black? White folks don't have to have that same process. They don't have to go through those same issues.
But they do need some therapy.
Well, that goes without stating. I thought that was understood, sir. Go ahead.
Well, we've got good reason to be skeptical. It ain't like James Baldwin said, by virtue of being Black in America, you're going to be paranoid. I mean, being Black, we have a right to be skeptical of all the systems within this country
That's right.
that have mistreated us. The health
knowingly, purposely,
yeah,
purposefully.
exactly. So now they say, all right, now I want you to believe, go run and get a vaccine. You know, we forget about what happened at Tuskegee. Forget about forget about Henrietta Lacks right over here at Johns Hopkins. You know, forget about all of that. Trust us.
In the middle of Black History Month.
Right, exactly. So I think we have a right to be skeptical. I think what I always tell people, whenever you're going to be encountering the system of white supremacy, you have to do reconnaissance on it. Mm-hmm. You need to, I try everybody, all of my healthcare people, all of them are Black. Every last one of them, dentists. I mean, everybody. I don't trust any white person to mess with my body. I just don't. And, I got Black attorneys. So I try to immerse myself in our community when it comes to professional stuff. And sometimes that means going out of the way. But I'd rather go out of the way than say, I want to be able to trust the people that I'm doing business with, doing legal stuff with, and doing healthcare stuff with.
But just because, now I got to say this, and I am, as Donnie's book says, I'm unapologetically Black. I'm Black in all caps. And my mouth says it, and everybody know it, and I don't care what you think. But there's some Black people that don't come correct.
Yeah.
I mean, for real.
Right.
And you can tell them that they're not coming correct. And I tell them, so your stuff is wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. That's not what you should have been doing. And I have a doctor that I was going to, and she messed up a whole bunch of stuff. And when you say that to them, they get offended.
Well, you should
look. But that's real. And we have to be able to reconcile all that. We have this expectation that too often people say that we as a people believe that the white folks' water is colder, right?
Right.
That everything's going to be over there. And the reality is that I want to support as many Black businesses and Black professionals as possible. But I want service. I want the product that you're supposed to give me the way I'm expecting it. And I shouldn't have to say, but if I go down to the white people, because I got problems with them too. But I want us to be at a level where we can meet the challenges, where we understand. And what is it that we need to do as Black consumers? I sit down and I look at all these doggone liquor stores all over the city of just Baltimore and DC and everywhere else. They're all Asians. Why don't Black people, as much Black money goes into the Asian liquor stores, why don't we have our own? Who are we? What are we doing? What are we doing that we can't bring all this together?
We moved to Randallstown. We sold the liquor store and we moved to Randallstown.
We did. And that, we were doing some research at the Institute. Do you know, y'all probably know this, but in the 1970s, Baltimore, if we speaking specifically of Baltimore, it had more Black-owned businesses per capita than any other city in the nation.
Stop.
Yeah,
what year was that?
1970s. More Black. Yes, more Black. Even now, you have Baltimore leads the nation in Black-owned vegan restaurants. Mm-hmm. I think that we can become excellent. But I always try to give my people some slack. See, I'll go to Walmart, which I rarely do. But if I go to Walmart and I get bad service, I'll still go back to Walmart. When we have higher expectations for our people. And I'm saying we should, don't get me wrong. But I usually allow them a little bit of slack in what they do because we have only been doing many of the things that white folks have been doing for a few years. Yep. John Hope Franklin used to say the reason why Black folk oftentimes don't handle their money well is because we've only been handling money since enslavement. White folks been handling it for the past 500 years. And so I try to give my people some slack. Now, what I will do, if I get bad service from a Black person, I will go to them privately. Sometimes I'll write an email, a letter, say, brother or sister, this happened. can we do this a little bit better next time? And they'll be appreciative of it. So, it's a delicate line, Marcia, and I know what you mean, because I do have high expectations when I go, to a store. I'm going to give you a tangible example here in Baltimore. I love movies. I'll go to 2 or 3 movies a week.
They got a new Black theater in Pikesville.
Look, ask them who their number one patron is.
Yay!
Now, I will go there and I pay $15 a ticket. I can go to AMC and pay $6.50. But I like the service over there is absolutely excellent. The food is good. Everything is it just works. It's a good example of Black excellence. So I pay more to go over there, twice the amount for a ticket, because I just like giving my money to Black folks. So, it depends on what we do. Yeah.
So, but I guess where I am is when we look at all these institutions, we have all these HBCUs and all these major urban markets, why aren't we and the institutions and the leadership, the Black leaders and ministers, we have all these different organizations. Why can't we create something that says, we're going to help you build your business. We're going to help you develop those strategies. Sometimes it's just because people, something I used to say 100 years ago is sometimes people don't even know what they don't know.
Well, what we got to do also, I'm going to tell you something else. We got to hold people accountable too.
Yes.
See, what Black folk, Bobby Wright used to say, it's hard for us to sanction our own people. If we have elected officials that aren't doing the job, we got to call them on it. If we have teachers that aren't teaching our children the correct way, we got to call them on that. If we have churches that are just, well, I'm going to get your money, but I ain't doing nothing for the community, we got to call them on that. It's hard for us to look at our own people and we can criticize them, but we don't oftentimes hold them accountable.
But is it criticism that we really need to be given, or is it something where we're sitting down and actually having a conversation with the outcome that we're going to help or mentor or help them develop and help them get the resources that they need? It's not always the criticism that needs to be given. It's, hey, you know what, can we just have a cup of coffee, and how can I help you do what you need to do to, I think, attract more, to do. We have to be more loving, more kind, more interested in the development and to help people where we see their shortcomings. If I'm giving you my money on a regular basis, I should be able to talk to you and tell you the things that I think might enhance what you're doing. We have to be more loving and kind and serious about how we're going to help build these businesses and build the strength. These are the legacies that we need to be giving our children. What do they see, and how can we help them see the way that it needs to be seen?
Well, I think we should do that. Absolutely. I think that we should, many of our institutions need help. Many of our churches need help. Sometimes I think that, this is a fact that the greatest transfer of wealth that occurs every week in the Black community Monday morning when Black churches move their money into a white bank. That's the greatest, right? And I don't want to name the city, but I consulted with some ministers a few years ago in a city, and they said, well, Dr. Winbush, we brought you in here to ask what we could do as a group. It was like one of these ministerial alliances.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to talk to them about a midnight basketball league. Well, first of all, our boys and girls shouldn't be playing basketball at midnight on a school night. They need to be asleep.
Right.
So they can be bright. So I suggested that on the fourth Sunday of every month, that half, not all, but half of the offering go into an escrow account and accumulate that over a period of 2 to 3 years and open a school. Mm-hmm. Well, that was a suggestion. They looked at me like I was out of my Black mind, because the first thing is, well, who's going to hold the money? White people will build the school and worship in the school and build the church later. Black folk will build the church and don't even think about the school. And I'm not being critical of ministers and stuff, but I think there's something we just have to cooperate on. You know, one of the principles of Kwanzaa is umoja, and it means cooperation.
That's right.
And we sometimes don't do that. Certain groups within our community, like the Caribbeans, have this thing, susu, that they cooperate with their money. But we have to do more cooperation within our own community to build it up economically.
Let's be fair. This country has reinforced to us that when we are successful, we will be a target. And case in point, this year is the 100th commemoration of what happened in Tulsa's Greenwood district.
That's right. That's right. And you're right. You know, it is the 100th anniversary. A few years ago, there's a little town right outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, called Redbird, Oklahoma. And a few years ago, I wanted to see Black Wall Street myself. So I just made a trip out there just for about a week, just seeing what it's a shadow of itself. But the people in Redbird are the descendants of those who were part of the massacre in 1921. And I talked to this old sister. She must have been in her mid to upper 80s, in fact. And she said they made one big mistake in Oklahoma. They said we did not have enough guns. That's what she said. And so everybody in this town of Redbird now is armed. And see, I don't want to, leave your listeners with some of this, but we need to start talking. See, in the 60s and 70s, we had guns. There's a book out now called We Will Shoot Back. Martin Luther King carried a gun. And Medgar Evers had a gun. He didn't bring it the night that he was killed. Dr. King had a license to carry. And I think that what we've got to look at is how, when we do build up something, as you said, Donnie, white people get jealous of it. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean.
Right.
Because I think that
why you think they be wearing everything we wear, every style we do, every dance move, every song, every art thing. Come on now, you get mad.
Exactly, they get angry and jealous because they are a global minority themselves. And they know that when we can compete equally with them,
we're not going to try to do that. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Tulsa people had to be exceptional. They were exceptional.
They had an airline in there. The Black community was flying people from Tulsa to Denver. They had an airline in 1921 and was flying people back and forth. They had two banks. I mean, you should read the history of Black Wall Street. As Du Bois called it, was the example of Black excellence in this country. And white folks, when they see our stuff and they know that we're good at it, they get jealous of it.
Right. And they try to appropriate it. It's really interesting.
Or destroy it.
Yeah, well, look, they get the booties blown up, they get the lips pooched out, they want body enhancements. You can see them. Our brothers wear the caps backwards. They got this. I know, I saw it, and now they do it. And so when you sit down and you look at it, now I'm from South Bend, Indiana, so y'all can't tell me much about white folks.
So Doc, we gotta go. But I had to ask you, Stevie Wonder
moving to Ghana.
He said, "The hell with this."
That's right. He said he wants his children not to experience some of the things that he had experienced. And I think we got Stevie's over there now. Akon is over there right now building that $1 billion city in Ghana. And I think that we got to look eastward. We got to look eastward.
We need to pray on that. That deserves conversation. I got a 12-year. He's 13 days, Peyton's birthday. So there's a young man that's coming up over here that we've got to be careful and protect.
Doc, we want you to know that we love you. We thank God for you.
Y'all keep up the good work, what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We're going to have you back more often.
Anytime.
All right, sir.
I don't know how to leave this place, but
he's going to do it.
Marsha, we're not done yet. We had
Oh,
to go over to Delaware for a moment. I don't know your schedule, but this is Leonard Young.
hi, Leonard
And
Young.
Hey, how are you?
Leonard has his own Black News Network. It's national in scope.
I love
he's
it.
big on Black business. Good morning, Leonard. How are you?
Good morning, Donnie. How you doing? Good morning, Marsha. Great to meet you.
Good morning, Leonard Young. It's nice meeting you as well.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, Leonard, let's get a list of your outlets.
Gotcha. Okay, so a little bit has changed recently. So, long story short, started with a website called DelawareBlack.com. The whole goal was promoting Black businesses, news, and events. And the reason why we started this website was, well, I guess both of y'all in Baltimore. Donnie, I know you've been to Delaware. I'm not sure about you, Marsha. But, you know, Delaware falls in the Philadelphia metro area. And the only time we got the Philadelphia news is somebody got robbed, shot, killed, you know, all the negative stuff. So there was a lot of positive stuff going on in Delaware that we wanted to be able to highlight. So that's kind of how I started the website, DelawareBlack.com. After that, really just taking that model to other cities. So probably in the last 8 years, we went to about 15 different cities where we had, you know, for instance, like we had DCBlack.com. So, you know, promoted DC Black businesses, DC Black events and news. Last year, and it's funny because Donnie, you told me about this probably 2 or 3 years ago. My wife's been telling me, but you know, basically people were always saying, okay, why have all these separate outlets? Why don't you combine it into one website? So last year going into this year, we actually combined all our city outlets into one national outlet, which is called National Black Guide. So when you go to National Black Guide now, if you are in one of our, let's say 20 top cities, you can go to what we call a city page where you can get news and information for that city. And we also launched a mobile app where everything that's on the website you can find on the app. You can find Black businesses closest to you wherever you go in the U.S.
That's great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So now, so it's all electronic?
Yep. So everything's online. So you can either go to the website or you can download our app and you can pretty much get all the information.
That's exciting. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
How did you do it, man? You get out the back. How'd you do 15 cities, man?
Yeah, well, like I'll tell you, it's funny. And Donnie, like I might have told you before at one of the events you had, but you were definitely an inspiration to me because even before I met you in Delaware, you know, I was already familiar with Be More News and you know what you did. I was more a behind the scenes person, so I just recently, you know, I understand you gotta get out, people gotta see you, people gotta hear you. But so I remember at the event you came to, let me backtrack a little bit. So I used to go to events and try to do video coverage. I had a camcorder, you know, so like I would go home and try to edit the video. And I went to an event and, you know, Donnie was there. He had his phone. He was doing all his video on his phone. And I was like, you know what? I was like, why am I making this more complicated than it needs to be? So, you know, after that, I'm like, you know, the phone works just fine. It's quick, it's instant. But, you know, I mean, pretty much with the websites, you know, I think it's really just taking advantage of technology. You know, I think now we can have businesses and not need to be in those areas. Right. So, you know, like just like you have Be More News, if you wanted to, you could have an LA News. And you could put all news stories, interview people, and not even need to live in LA.
That's right.
So, you know, I think that's just one of the beauties with the internet now is that if you have a good platform, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, because a lot of times people, like, we don't know who runs a lot of these platforms. We just know, okay, we like going here, they have good information. Right. So, you know, that's one thing I just try to do. I just try to put out good information. And even though I was not in those areas, you know, if you see one of your competitors listed on a website, then you know you want to be there too. So, you know, I think that was just one of the benefits that made it a little bit easier.
Is it easier having it all on National Black Guide?
Yes, yes, so
Yes.
much easier. You know,
Right.
and just for a little backstory, and so like Donnie, I don't know who you use to host your website, but you know, my host used to give me all types of problems, and even during the George Floyd pandemic last year, my website was down for about 3 weeks. So it's like, yeah, and I mean, you know, of course they want to charge you, you know, everything for everything. And, you know, so like we weren't able to cover a lot of stories, you know, we weren't able to do a lot. So, you know, that's what kind of prompted me to the switch.
That was a hit, just like a social media outlet, wink, wink, put a hit on me. We had 211,000 followers, and next thing I know,
They're gone.
we had to start all over from scratch.
Oh,
So-
see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is a whole nother. We talk about racism. That's a whole nother
Right.
thing. Leonard Young, I'm proud of you. I'm very excited. I'm going to go to your website and check it out. But I've got a previous engagement. I'm headed out. But I'm sure we're going to see more of you.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Take care.
All right. Thank you.
So what's next? And how? Well, let's back up. How have you been dealing? You know, pandemic and all. Are you pushing the vaccine? Did you get some people get paid to push the vaccine?
No, no. I mean, I didn't. I wasn't looking for it.
It's money out there. It's money out there right now to promote the vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I will say nobody has approached me directly. To be honest, I'm not sure if I would or wouldn't. What you say?
I'm not. I can't tell you what to do with your body.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. And, you know, for the people who get it, you know, I mean, you know, everybody does their own thing. I understand. My dad has dementia. So, you know, he got the vaccine. My stepmother, because they live together, they got the vaccine. I just don't know if I feel comfortable pushing that out this early. You know, I mean, like maybe when there's a point where we have more results and, you know, more case studies, but, you know, right now, you know, it's kind of wishy-washy. And, you know, luckily, and for you too, you know, money is not, you know, the end all factor in that.
God gave us a purpose.
Right.
I was just about to ask you, you know, this is Black History Month, but in the realm we're in, Black media, we stand on the shoulders of David Walker Peel, of Frederick Douglass, Samuel Cornish, John Russworm. We stand on Ida B. Wells. We have a special obligation as the Black media, as the Black press.
You do. Well, you know, like one of the things I always think about is the quote, and this is really what drives me. But, you know, Black media controls our narrative. So, you know, kind of like what we put out specifically for Black media is what most Black Americans are more likely to believe. So, you know, I almost feel like we have a higher duty than, you know, all these other outlets because they're looking at us because we are one of them. So, you know, like, and you know, I'm sure you too, but, you know, so that's why, like, even when people approach with money, now, you know, some money's good, but, you know, that can't be, you know, the focus on how we deliver the content we deliver.
Because we'd be no different than the dope.
Right. Exactly.
Where do you see, do you plan on doing more electronically? I mean, this platform here, we're streaming now. We do shows Monday through Friday, 10 to 11. Now we have evening program Monday through Thursday. We're looking to do even more. Where do you foresee yourself, say, as we head through 2021 and 2022?
Yeah, so, you know, I definitely want to continue developing our websites. Like, as I said, we have a mobile app which pretty much connects to the websites, all the information. So, you know, definitely want to be able to get our app out there, you know, and I think it's a benefit because when people travel city to city, you know, they can get information in different city all in one place. As far as our long-term goals, I would definitely love to do something like you're doing. Not quite ready yet, but, you know, just something that's a little more interactive.
Have you seen Fly Nubian Queen?
No, I haven't.
Well, it's a group of people, and they all broadcast through Fly Nubian Queen. I would presume mostly Black women.
Gotcha.
What I'm seeing there and with Clubhouse,
Yes.
people are teaming up together.
Yeah, definitely.
I've seen people go into Clubhouse, maybe 6 of them, they make a date, they make an appointment, they all show up.
Yep.
Next thing you know, their room is flooded.
Right. Now, are you on Clubhouse?
I am on Clubhouse.
Okay, I'll make sure I follow you.
But I'm finishing up my book on Black Wall Street, so I have to be mindful with my time because Clubhouse can be
definitely
engaging and demanding, and I need to stay focused.
Gotcha. Okay.
Are you on Clubhouse?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I'm on it. I'm still a newbie. Like I haven't done anything yet, but you know, definitely looking forward to, you know, doing some hosting and, you know, hopefully trying to get a group together. But I mean, that's a great idea because that's one thing I was thinking, you know, I think Clubhouse is great for teams and people working together. So, and you know, even when you go on Clubhouse now, you just, and, you know, my wife was telling me, and I've seen otherwhere, but there's some groups that darn near go 24 hours a day. They just have different moderators.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was just thinking about just the whole platform of people working together to, you know, just increase that engagement. So, I mean, that's definitely something I'm looking to do. Now that you said, I'm definitely going to hit you up, you know, as soon as your book come out.
So look, they have 2 social media on there, Twitter and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Do you foresee that being the new wave? I love where Facebook is not the only entity.
Right.
That's why we do YouTube. Of course, Facebook owns Instagram, but I'm seeing the future. I mean, because no one has ever tapped before being able to talk on the phone and the social media. I foresee all of those elements, written, spoken, video on one platform.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you know, I definitely think, you know, I think Clubhouse has definitely dominated that audio chat / conference feature. So I don't think it would be that hard to add in some features that are already there, such as, you know, a news feed, adding pictures and, you know, that stuff. So, I mean, I could definitely see, if not Clubhouse, somebody taking that model and just, you know, branching off on it.
And then also with this right here, this platform, what's the difference between this and what you see on television? I was watching Colbert the other night, and I felt sorry for him.
Why you say that?
Because he was there by himself. Normally the monologue goes to an audience. I mean, put some fake laughter in there or something.
Put some laugh tracks.
It's drier than some of our politicians. It's dry.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I definitely agree. So, like, what I thought you were going to say, are you on? Is this your network only that you're on now?
BlackUSA.News. No, Marsh is on it. We have 4 shows in the evening.
Gotcha.
We do the morning show, and we're looking to add even more. So to make it a family of contributors.
Okay. Well, you know, I mean, I'd definitely be interested in that because, like, that's something I was looking forward to, where it's like, okay, having a set time every week, doing your shows, but still kind of being like a family of people, you know, with the same goals.
Well, teamwork, that's all we got. If we don't work together, no one will. I mean, no one's going to come and save us. And if what did you think of January 6th when you saw them people scaling the wall?
I mean, to be honest, like I was staring in disbelief. I mean, you know, like one of the things I always think about, these are the people who wanted to protect the cops were the same one assaulting the cops. You know, I mean, I just thought it was crazy. And it's funny because my wife and we were watching a show on Netflix. I think it was Vikings, and in the scene of Vikings, and like the scene we were watching was one of the ones where they tried to storm a castle, and the attackers were climbing the walls, and then they turn on TV and see these white people literally scaling these walls to, you know, get into the Capitol. I mean, it was crazy.
It's like we took the steps.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it was definitely crazy. And it's just one of the things where, I mean, of course, it's already been said, but of course, if they were Black people, you know, that scene would have been totally different. there would have been many arrests on site, many deaths probably. And, it just would have been one of those things where, Black people acting out of hand again, like that would have been the news story.
How can people support you?
Yep. So the easiest way is go to our website, nationalblackguide.com. They can also download our app. Our app is in the Apple App Store, Samsung Galaxy Store, and Amazon apps.
Good stuff. Is it expensive, the app?
Oh no, the app is free, so there's no excuse.
No, for you.
So I mean, yes and no, but it's one of those things where we got to make that investment, and
that's why I had to go and get that iPhone.
Right. Yep, same here. So you just had to make that investment. And
I wanted to tell you, in the New York City mayor's race, you have Ray McGuire, the brother from Wall Street, and then you have Eric B. Adams, the Brooklyn borough president. And I've been watching, they have almost a silent clubhouse competition. Oh, I'm seeing Clubhouse impact the June 22nd mayor's race in New York City. Clubhouse.
Wow. So hold on, so they're hosting shows on Clubhouse? I mean, rooms? Oh, wow.
I saw Ray McGuire on there with, he had Gayle King, he had MC Hammer, and one other noted Black celebrity. And this was like 4 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So I imagine since then it's almost a silent competition.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Numbers on Clubhouse, but my point more so is Clubhouse is a new political organizing tool.
Definitely.
Good deal. Proud of you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And keep doing what you're doing.
All right, we'll do.
Okay, big brother.
Okay, thank you.
Another edition of BlackUSA.News Morning Show. My name's Donnie Glover, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks again, Leonard.
Okay, thank you.